Welcome to episode 17 of Feeling Through Live. I am very ecstatic to be joined today by Dr. Francis J. Casale. He is a man who's lived many lives, including being a pastor. So today we're going to talk about a whole host of things, but before we hop into things, Dr. Francis, I'd love if you could just give a quick introduction to everyone who's watching.
Hello there. I'm very excited to be here. Thank Jesus for that. So just to introduce myself, I grew up in a Catholic Italian family. My grandparents and my parents moved here to America. They went through Ellis Island here in New York, where they emigrated. And then I was born here in the US.
Well, that's let's get into that and open that up a little bit more. So let's go back. You said you were born to an Italian Catholic family. So what, I guess, as a child, what role did Catholicism and religion play in your life?
This is Dr. Francis. Growing up in a Catholic household, I was around priests a lot. I was an altar boy. Around the age of 10 is when I started that for 7 years. And I worked with priests, and we went to different churches for services. I also worked with the bishop as well as the cardinal. I worked with Father Holland in New Orleans, providing a week's worth of services there. And I really enjoyed it so very much. It really allowed me to further become connected with Christ and with our Lord.
So again, I wanna just take a little bit more of a step back, because I know that there's been quite a journey from you as a small boy to you now as a pastor. And I know that before we kind of get into that, I'd love to just talk on the side of things about you are a man who is deafblind, and I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit about your journey through that lens and how you came to know that you were deafblind, or if it was something that progressed over time, or if it was something from when you were a child. Could you explain that a little bit more?
This is Dr. Francis. Sure, I'd be happy to share that with you. I was born deaf, which my parents didn't know at the time that I was deaf until I was the age of 2. And I was a typical baby. I would play, but my parents noticed I wouldn't respond if they called me. So they took me to the doctor, and they realized I was deaf. And I, at that time, was having to use speech. They reached out to a speech therapist at school in California and figured out how to teach me how to speak. And that started when I was the age of 3. I also went to the American School for the Deaf, and that's the first deaf school founded in our country. It's in Connecticut, in West Hartford. So when I was around peers, I had 14 other students, 12 to 14 other students in my class, and many of them had deaf parents, and they were signing, like hands up in the air, going lightning speed, and I was just in awe of that. I was frustrated. We would play a game, let's say together, even just simple, something with a ball. And as I got older, I would miss things when we would play games with my peers, and it was frustrating. Later on, when I was 16 years old, I did learn to drive a car, but the car would veer a little bit, and my instructor said to me, I think you should go see an eye doctor. And I said, I can see just fine. And they said, no, they recommended I go to see the eye doctor. And at that time is when I found out that I had Usher syndrome at the age of 16. The doctor explained to me what that meant. It would mean a tunneling of my vision. And I didn't realize I didn't have great peripheral vision. I also would experience night blindness. And my mom asked the doctor, how did this happen? And they said it was something genetic, something within the family. And that was a challenge to hear. Many years later, my wife and I, we have two children who are now grown, one daughter, she is an interpreter, she is hearing, and she would hear, conversation and tell me everything that's going on, you know, why I had such eye challenges that she would hear out in the community. In 2012, when there was further discussion regarding my vision, I was afraid. I was upset. And when I was talking with my mom about it, really that experience changed my life, and that is because of Jesus Christ. I got my theology degree. I have my family. I have two wonderful children. And in talking with my mom really divulged a lot more information. That when she was pregnant with me in 1947, my mom went to visit my father's side of the family. And someone in that family had rubella. And although they visited, they tried to stay away. And my mom, who felt bad for her, tried to help her out. She gave her a little bit of cream to this family member. And my mom thinks she perhaps contracted rubella. And that's why I was born deaf and later lost my vision.
I see. So going back again, I don't want to speed too quickly through your childhood, because I know from when we were able to connect the other day, I know that you shared with me that though you were born into an Italian Catholic family and were an altar boy when you were younger, and certainly Catholicism played a large role in your life, I know that at that time you were somewhat, I don't know if skeptical is necessarily the right word, but you didn't necessarily have the relationship to God and your faith now that you did then. Can you talk about how things were prior to really coming into that relationship when you were younger and not quite there yet? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
This is Dr. Francis. So again, growing up in a Catholic household, I used to watch the priests as they gave their sermons. I looked at what they did on the altar. I really studied it. And I looked at my mom. My mom would often pray for me. I thought maybe perhaps I'd want to become a priest myself. I would learn how to become a priest. And I saw how my mom would interact with different other parishioners and their relationships with God. And for me, I was young. I went to Gallaudet, and at that time, I decided that, and I didn't want to be Catholic. I was going to be an atheist. I did not want to have anything to do with religion. I was going to be an atheist. And a friend of mine in the 1970s in California explained to me about Jesus Christ and how he saves people and how he heals people. And I was having some difficulty at the time, obviously, with my vision loss. And I was thinking that Jesus Christ, I needed a stronger relationship with God. And the vehicle to that was through Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is essentially the high priest. Judaism has their high priest. Jesus Christ is our high priest. And so at that point, I accepted Jesus Christ on July 4th of 1974. And it just resounded through my life. I felt such joy in reading the Bible and really studying it. And I learned a lot about religion, and not just about religion, but really Christianity. And it really impacted and a change within me. I was struggling, but I was proud, and God really helped to save me from my pride. And over time, I gradually improved. I focused on self improvement as much as I could. And that is how I came to be where I am.
So before we continue, just a reminder for those who are watching, if you have any questions throughout this episode, please feel free to type it in the chat box. We'll certainly get to it. And if you'd like to share this, if you're on Facebook, please hit the share button. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to share the link with anyone who you think might be interested. And so continuing here, so you mentioned kind of the moment that things shifted for you around your relationship to God and Christianity. But prior to that, you said you were atheist or kind of identifying as atheist for some period of time. Can you talk about what shifted from being a young boy who was an altar boy in an Italian Catholic family to at some point in your young adulthood identifying as atheist for a period of time?
This is Dr. Francis. Yes. I've seen lots of changes in myself over my lifetime. I always thought that, I wanted to be able to see again. I was frustrated. I was exhibiting challenges. I would get bumps and scrapes and bruises. I would have difficulty seeing at night. I was jealous of others. And, Christianity taught me to not be jealous of other people. And when I met my wife, we went to a Christian college in Dallas, Texas, called Christian for the Nation Institute. And this place is a famous place for recovering and interpreter's just going to clarify. And for this place is famous. They have a world-renowned program. They have interpreters there. And I was extremely motivated. Lots of people gathered and prayed for the healing of my eyes. And I was just proud at the time. I was still fighting. I, was losing more vision, and I was just struggling to hold on to my vision. I was saying I can still do things with my sight. And even though I broke my wrist, I broke several other things on my body and had injuries. And I changed because after graduating from this institute, I went to the Helen Keller National Center. And people said, "Oh, you're deafblind and you're a preacher?" And I could just see something. God had a different plan for me. God had a plan and a reason for me being deafblind. And I had resisted that plan until 2001, when I joined the Church of God in Palomar, Colorado. And I was the pastor at a retreat. And I was the only deaf person there with an interpreter. And I prayed one evening. I begged the Lord. I begged him for healing. "Please, Lord, heal me." And I at that point read John chapter 9 in the Bible, several verses. And it said, the blind man asked Jesus for healing. And was he blind because of his sins? Is that the reason that he was blind? And Jesus said, "No, it is not. That is all in God's plan." And I realized God sent me. God sent me for this purpose. And it really impacted me, this story that I had read in John. And it made my life. I knew God had a plan, a design for me. And I gave up my pride. I gave up what I wanted. And I gave it all to the Lord. And I just sobbed. I just felt this enormous change within me. It just opened so many doors. I've been a part of TV programs. I've done missionary work. I've preached. I've expanded the community. I've helped found 3 churches and seen all these and witnessed all these things happen. And I have to thank the Lord for that. I have to thank the Holy Spirit for helping me to understand their plan. And going to Helen Keller National Center in 2012, I learned so very much there. Wow.
Well, there's so much in what you just shared, and I have a couple specific questions about a lot of the wonderful things you just shared. But before I mention that, I want to say that one of my later questions was going to be, do you know of other deafblind pastors? But I will say that William Iper, who's watching on Facebook right now, just messaged that he is a deafblind pastor as well. So I guess that at least partially answers a question that I was going to ask you later. But William, who is also a deafblind pastor, says hi. And so hello, William. Thank you for watching today. But to go back to some of what you were just talking about, Dr. Francis, and there's so much really beautifully told what you were just talking about. But I know that you were talking about the topic of still kind of battling the fact that you were losing your sight and kind of not wanting to find a way to get your sight back. And then obviously the shift, particularly around the verses that you shared from the Bible that really had that profound effect on you, where you much more deeply embraced your deafblindness. But before that moment, before that happened, could you tell us a little bit more about some of the resistance you had initially to accepting yourself as a person who is deafblind?
This is Dr. Francis. Really, for me, it was pride. I thought, I could do it. I could beat this. I can still, drive a car. I could do all of these things. I can take pictures and photography and all these things that I love to do. And even though I struggled, I wanted to keep doing it. I love the game of baseball and football, and I would try to participate, and people would be like, you can't do that. There's something wrong with your vision. You can't do it. And I'd say, no, I can. And I'd stand up there and I'd watch, when I was playing baseball, and I'd watch that pitch come in, and I'd try to catch it, and it would go past me, and then I'd go looking for the ball that was, on the ground behind me. And someone would run up right next to me and say, the ball's right there. And then I'd pick up the ball, I'd throw it on in. And other people would say, yeah, better you just, you gotta be a bench warmer. And I wanted to play. And it was a fight. It was a constant fight as I grew up. And finally, I gave in to our Lord and what his plans for my life were. In going to the doctor and when I was a child and finding out about losing my vision, I realized I needed to be careful. And although I wanted to keep doing what I was doing, but really, I had to take care of my life in spite of all these things that were going on.
So I'm going to actually go to a question from one of our viewers. And certainly, I think this question pertains to the topic you were just discussing, as far as once you really embraced God and really let that kind of, once that shift happened for you, how it's really served you in your life. But the question comes from Neelam. Hello, thank you for joining us again. Neelam is a great friend of Feeling Through community. And she asks, how do you keep faith if you've walked down the children's hospital ward way too many times? How do you find a purpose in God when you've held your child's hand multiple times not knowing if they will survive?
This is Dr. Francis. It all just comes down to faith. Even though you can't see it, you know it's there. You have to continue. There's this line, this threshold that you are, and you just need to keep your eyes forward. And you won't fall away. You won't fall through. You will stay sturdy. And so you need to pay attention and grow through the Holy Spirit, through your connection with God, and maintain that faith so you don't fall away from the Lord. During my time, growing up as a Catholic, but the priest would come to my house often, and we didn't really have this sort of relationship. I didn't have a relationship with God yet. The priest actually came for one of my birthday parties, and he gave me a gift and then left. And after I had eye surgery, specifically for cataracts, the priest didn't come. And he promised he was going to come to visit me. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe we can play cards or something sometime." There didn't really seem to be a whole lot of discussion. And I struggled with that. But now, as I approach others, friends and family, I enjoy talking with others. I enjoy talking about my faith and talking to them about Christ.
So, just one more question about going back to when you were still trying to hold on to or regain your eyesight. I know you had mentioned when we had spoken before about some experimental procedures that you did in Russia at this time prior to really accepting yourself as a deaf-blind man. Can you tell me a little bit more about that experience?
So it was in 1977. My mom found out through an article in the newspaper that Russia had some treatments that would help to be able to improve people with retinitis pigmentosa, which is what I had. So we had reached out and made preparations and actually went to Russia. And I was expecting with this, my eyes would be healed, my vision would be healed. But the doctor said, so with the retinitis pigmentosa on the retina, it would be a process to heal it. And we went back several times, in fact, 11 times over the course of 6 years. We went every 6 months to Russia. My parents spent bucket loads of money for this, and I saw almost no improvement, but we continued to go. At Christ College that my wife and I were there, at the Institute, we prayed together, and really faith is the key. And I decided to no longer go to Russia, and I changed my life. I accepted who I am as a deaf-blind person, that God had a purpose for me, God had a plan, and that was through the church. I could see all the things that were happening, and that God loved all people, even deaf-blind people. And it was good to know that God had a purpose for me. But that pride, that sense of will, it was difficult to give up, which is why I went to Russia. Looking at FDA trials here in the US, they don't succeed. And part of that is because God has a plan.
I'm wondering, it was quite a while ago that you did those procedures that, like as you described, didn't end up excuse me, that didn't end up gaining your eyesight back. Do you know what it ever happened with those procedures? Is that something that they still do? Were they found just generally to not be effective? Do you know anything about where those procedures stand today?
This is Dr. Francis. I don't know. I don't know if those procedures continued or no longer. I'm not sure.
So moving forward here to when I want to go now, jump back forward to after you really embraced God and also your identity as a man who is deaf-blind. I understand that you've traveled the world. Your faith has taken you around the world. Can you tell me about some of your travels associated with your missionary work? Can you tell me more about that?
This is Dr. Francis. After graduating from Christ College, I did my first missionary work in Japan, in Korea, and I was there for in total a month. My wife interpreted for me. She is familiar with Japanese Sign Language. Her name is Kimmy, or she was Japanese. And so we traveled all over, and people were like, "You are a deafblind person? You can do that? You can do this?" I've also been to Honduras for missionary work. I've been there 4 times. And there I helped people and taught them, provided counseling, helped provided training, as well as to deaf people there because they are behind in their education there, just with their system. I've also been to the Philippines. I've been there twice. The first time I helped to found a church. During my second visit, there was a big conference with over 200 people in attendance. And those 200 people were from different countries all over the world. And I did preached several sermons there, and people were sobbing during my sermons. And I said, why are you crying? And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you are deaf-blind. I cannot believe it. You can do anything. You are fantastic and so inspirational." There were deaf-blind people there too that were also very inspired by my sermons. Back in the 70s or 80s I'd like to share with you, I really had a lot of thought about going to this Christian college. And a pastor from Missouri came to my church and was doing a sermon. And he was doing a liturgy at the church. And it was part of their deaf program. And he was encouraging deaf people he had a free list of resources that he was giving out to people for worship to try and have people become more a part of the community. And I was one of those applicants that he gave information to. And when we met, he said, "Wait a second, you're deafblind. You can't be a pastor." And I was furious. I couldn't believe he said that to me. I was proud of who I was. He's frozen. I have no feed right now. I have no feed.
Oh, sorry. Can we hold one moment?
Sorry, this is the interpreter.
Can you hold him?
It's going in and out on my video feed.
Kamala, do you have a better feed right now?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
so can you pick up?
I can just keep going, or do you want to stop them?
Oh no, we can. Yeah, we'll hold for a second and then kind of pick up from where we are. Does Does that work?
Okay.
Okay,
Sure.
great. So yeah, just continue with Kamala voicing, and if we can just tell Dr. Francis to kind of just back up a little bit in his story. So actually hold one moment. We actually lost Liz, so the room got all reoriented here. So I'm gonna need to just take a moment. This here, folks, is good old live broadcasting here. As you can see, the room is predicated on a Zoom room orientation, and if someone drops out, the room kind of gets all a little bit wonky. So if you just bear with us here. We're going to get this resorted in just a moment. It looks like a modern art piece for the time being, but until we get things resituated here. So just give us a few moments. This is kind of the beauty of live broadcasts here. You get to see all our mistakes as well. So this keeps us on our toes, of course. Just give us a couple more moments here. We'll be set. All right, getting back here. Look at this. Ready? So I'm going to be resituated in just a moment here. We go one at a time. It's a little bit of a slow process, but we'll get there in a moment. Feel free to make fun of me in the comments. That's totally okay. Look, I'm back. We're gonna get our other folks back here in a moment. Just give us just a couple moments here. All righty. And here we go. Look, it's slowly but surely it's becoming not so much a modern art display here, but something that resembles what we were doing before. There have been a lot of storms on the East Coast, I know, so reception has been a little bit tricky at times. All right, so we have you back up, Alyssa. And just in just a moment, we'll have Dr. Francis back with us here. Hold one moment. Thank you for waiting and bearing with us here. I'm sure this is very interesting to watch. Perhaps it is. I don't know. Sometimes the bloopers are one of the most fun parts here, but we're about 30 seconds away from looking normal again. So bear with us here. In the meantime, this is a good opportunity to remind you that feel free to ask any questions you might have. I know Dr. Francis has been talking about some very interesting stuff, which might spark some questions you have. So feel free to join in with any questions. And we're just moments away here from being back into a normal orientation. How does this look? How are we doing here? I think we're looking good again. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, Dr. Francis, sorry for that. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we are back and ready to continue your story. So, if you recall where you were in your story, I'd love for you to pick up from there.
This is Dr. Francis. I was saying that, that preacher had told me that I wasn't able to become a minister myself, which extremely angered me. I had my faith, I was humble, I had been a counselor, I was an intelligent man. I had learned a lot and I wasn't going to give up. I had been through a lot of different challenges through my life and I had walked on through my faith. So that had been the key to my success.
So I know that, it's interesting that you share that. I know in a lot of the conversations that we've had on Feeling Through Live, certainly an ongoing topic is the capability of the deafblind community meeting a lot of false assumptions that some people make outside of the community. Um, Certainly, you're not only able very capable of being a deafblind pastor, but have been one for quite some time now. But have you met resistance like that from other people as well throughout your journey as a pastor who is deafblind?
This is Dr. Francis. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Certainly, there there are a lot of people, like, again, you're talking about a lot of people who might say that you're not suited for or capable of being a pastor because you're deafblind. But with that false assumption aside, can you speak to some of maybe the unique advantages or the unique gift that you provide as a deafblind pastor, specifically being a deafblind pastor? Does that actually allow for certain things that, say, a pastor who isn't deafblind wouldn't be able to necessarily do in the way that you can?
So are you asking in terms of how my influence on others, like how I help people? Well, I do educate people about my life as a deafblind individual and the frustrations that I have had and the challenges. And I think in that way, possibly, people who have maybe a similar struggle or had a similar challenge, I'm showing them that you can be successful and you can get through those moments in life. Um, but I have hosted workshops as well to teach those very things, how to persevere.
What about for, is there any of your congregation that is where ASL is their primary language? Do you have members of your congregation where that's the case?
Yes. Really, I have three separate congregations. There's one that is hearing, who they utilize spoken English for communication. One that is deaf and deaf-blind, and for that we utilize ASL, American Sign Language, and we also have interpreters for those. So really, I try to use what it is that people that need for themselves. So I try to meet them where their needs are. And I like to lead by example as well. So when I'm there and I'm praying, I have an interpreter there on stage with me, and there's music, and everything's going on, and I walk around with that interpreter. So the interpreter utilizes tactile sign language with me and engages the audience. So that's how I preach. And I really depend on that tactile feedback. And I do turn and I make sure that I am facing the different areas of the congregation so that everyone has access to me. And if, say, a congregant were to come up to me and want to talk to me, the interpreter lets me know, and we go turn by turn, and we communicate tactily via tactile ASL. Sometimes for an appointment, I may be in my office, and in that way, we would either communicate tactily as well, or I would have an interpreter if someone wanted to speak privately. And we'll do a one-to-one communication. And if they wanted to be private and they didn't want an interpreter, then we would just speak directly with each other using tactile ASL. But there are people who are intimidated by that sense of touch. They're not comfortable with the tactile aspect. So I try to sort of just ease them into that, make them a little more comfortable, chat, try to build that rapport. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, currently the church has been closed. So we've been meeting on Facebook and on YouTube, and I've been utilizing my wife here as an interpreter. And there are individuals on screen, on video as well. And they'll use a tap feature. They'll tap my leg to give me some cues. And that's how we set up that kind of situation. I did a mission in Iowa for a TV program, Silent Blessing. I was able to see pretty well at that time. This was in 2005. So that's actually when they would use that leg tapping as well as tactile signals on my back to give me cues as to where to go to guide me through the environment. And I would also track along the perimeter of different landmarks in the room as well, because I was starting to lose my vision at that time. And I really felt that it was important to really show people through that example, how I was able to overcome.
Speaking of TV shows, I know that part of your life's journey has taken you to being an actor. Can you tell people a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is Dr. Francis. Well, I began acting in high school. I was in a musical group, a talent dance group. And then when I went to Gallaudet University, I'm actually minored in art and drama. And I just loved drama. So over the 5 years of my time there, I was in 10 different productions. I was worked in like the lighting aspect. I won awards. I worked in design. And then I went to California and I continued on with that. I did a production there. And it was quite impressive. It was really amazing. And then over the years, as I began to lose my vision, I was less involved with theater. I was also, though, in Silent Blessing. It was for parents of deaf children. It was an organization for parents of deaf children to teach them about Christ. And I actually played the role of an Italian chef who was quite boisterous and, would tell stories. And that was there were 2 videos actually. So that was one of 2. And that was a TV program on TBN. And It was Dr. Wonder's workmanship. And that was on daytimes television. It was a small show, but then it became worldwide. But we wanted to promote it more for deaf people. And it was a half-hour program. And it taught about character, about respecting and, being truthful and, having that relationship to the Bible. It really connected back to the scripture. And it really taught respect for parents. And so I would be sitting there having a conversation, and a girl would tap on my foot under the table. The camera was on me, but then under the table, I would get those signals. So I'd be signing, and then when I got that touch signal, I would then gesture to that individual. So I would face that individual, and I was able to engage in that way. So I knew when was appropriate turn taking. I was given those tactile cues. And I really felt like I was, acting for our Lord Jesus.
Well, you kind of just answered my next question, because I was going to ask if your life as an actor served you in your life as a pastor, but it sounds like there's a very direct overlap in some instances.
Yes.
I'm wondering, just we have about 8 or so minutes left, and certainly, Dr. Francis, if there's anything in particular you want to make sure that we discuss before the conclusion of this episode, please do let me know. But I was wondering if you could talk about if you consider yourself religious or spiritual or both, and kind of what your personal definition is of religion versus spirituality.
This is Dr. Francis. Well, religion is really rituals, gatherings. It's something organized. So it really requires, it's God meeting your needs and having that faith that He has given to you. He's given you that free will, and that's through Jesus Christ. So the Spirit has come down on you. In religion, there are things that we need to do to earn, to actually be considered religious. However, spirituality, that's a relationship you have with God. That's something that's been given to you. And Jesus laid on the cross and died for us. So religion actually follows the laws of the church. But the actual love and the blessing that's given to us, that's there in the spirituality. There are at times, conflicts between religions. Not all religions agree. But your spiritual being is more of who you are. That's something internal. That's the spirit inside of you. That's in your mind, and it's God's love. And that power is there for us. And it's really a blessing.
You,
God bless you all.
we had talked earlier about your journey from growing up with religion, your own kind of personal wavering of faith, and then coming into really giving into your faith and 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 really cultivating that strong relationship to God and your faith. Um, so now, as a man who's been a pastor for many years, certainly been someone of faith for many years, how would you describe your deaf blindness now through the lens of where you're sitting at this very moment?
That's a really difficult question. But, I feel that my deaf blindness was really a gift. That was given to me by God. Because through my experience, I'm able to the life and world, we all have to live together. So that's really my gift. I'm not just, someone who sits around and feels pity. I want to teach the world. I want to educate them about, what it's like, in my faith. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic, if you're Jewish, if you're sighted or deaf or blind, regardless of your culture or language. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. You are capable to be a part of the world and to influence others. A lot of people look down and think that deaf or deafblind individuals are not able to do things. And they feel that it's something that needs to be fixed. But there are deafblind individuals who do things better than people who aren't. So we really can learn from them as an example.
That's certainly a beautiful message that you shared and articulated in a really beautiful way. William Eiper, Eipper, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who I mentioned earlier, who is a pastor who is deafblind, who's watching as well. He asks, what is your favorite Bible verse?
My favorite Bible verse is Romans chapter 10, verse 17. And it talks about listening through the heart. Faith is in the heart. And you get the word of God. Everyone can have faith. And that's through the heart. That is where the Spirit is. So if you're looking for God, you only need to look within. And the Spirit will be there. And the Spirit is in everything. Maybe we can't see it, but it's there and it will guide us. And that's my favorite verse, Romans chapter 10, verse 17.
Well, that's a beautiful way to wrap up today's episode as we're coming to time. Before we go, I'd like to mention to all of you watching, if you enjoyed this conversation, please let other people know about Feeling Through Live. We do this live stream every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be back again with amazing guests in the future. You can also check out all our old episodes. You can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/feelingthrough. We have all of our old episodes there, previous episodes there. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And also, if you click the little bell, the notification bell next to the subscribe button, you can also get notified when we go live so that you can tune in for all of these. And if you're watching on Facebook, we'll continue to post information about future episodes there, facebook.com/feelingthrough. We also have the previous episodes up on our Facebook page as well. And a reminder, if you haven't already, or if you want to join us again, because each experience is completely different, we'll be doing the Feeling Through Experience live stream on August 13th. And that will be, you'll be able to sign up for your free e-ticket at YouTube. Oh, it looks like we might have lost our interpreter. Oh, here we are. Okay, it froze for a second. Are you back with us, Alyssa? Great. I know that the East Coast has been dealing with a lot of storms and such. So if it's getting, we fortunately didn't get too choppy until the very end here. But yeah, please for your free e-ticket to the Feeling Through experience, just go to feelingthrough.com/register, and really that's a one-of-a-kind event. We'll have hundreds of people from throughout the country and around the world join us for that, for this 3-part event that includes the first film starring a deafblind actor, a supporting documentary, and a panel discussion and Q&A with some amazing guests there. So I highly encourage you to sign up for that. Again, feelingthrough.com/register. And finally, I would like to thank you, Dr. Francis, for joining us today. Really, such an amazing journey you've had, and your ability to share it, I'm sure, has really resonated with a lot of people watching. So thank you so much for joining us today. I think we just got a little...
Oh, she froze again.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Alyssa, could you just let Dr. Okay, it looks like we're perhaps getting...